Hello everyone, Linda Israel here, and today I'm going to share with you how to make a junk journal cover. And I'm going to do it based off of the Golden Christmas Journal Kit from Calico Collage. And I've got a few things laid out here that I'm going to use in this journal. So first of all, you've printed or cut or selected papers for your junk journal. In this particular case, these were digital downloads, whereas the bases of the measurements for my junk journal. Then I cut scrapbook paper, I cut notebook paper, more of the images. This is a mop-up page that I've sewn and added page to it. So this particular page measures, and I'll just kind of lay it out here so you can see this. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and a quarter long is what this sheet of paper is. And it's approximately 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 inches tall. So what I did was I went in and I cut a whole bunch of paper at that size. So there is the pages for my journal. Now I embellish my journal pages before I put them together and before I'm going to sew them to the signature. Now sewing to the signature to the cover is not the same as sewing pieces of paper to other pieces of paper with the sewing machine. It is a different process. You do not have to have a sewing machine to make a junk journal. So here's what I've done. I've grouped these pages together so that they're all nestled and they are even for top and bottom. Some pages may be longer than others. And then I've got 3 signatures that I'm adding to my journal, and I'll do the same thing. I'll make sure that I've got them paper clipped and ready to go. The next thing that I do is I take a ruler and I determine how wide or deep is this journal going to be. And it's about 1 inch if I squish it together. So I'm going to say it's 1.25 inches is the depth of the spine that I want this journal to have. So knowing those bits of information, that the journal is at least 8 inches tall, and I need to make about a 1.25 inch piece for the spine, because I'm going to adhere them this way, okay? I cut a piece that's just slightly larger than 8 inches. It's about 8.5 inches, so that's one piece. That's going to be my spine. Then I cut another sheet of, this is chipboard, so you can use from a cereal box, old books that you cut apart and you use the book board. I like this weight because it was free, y'all. I got it. I'm using it. I'm not going to go spend money on chipboard when I have a bunch of it. So this piece is cut, again, at 8.5 inches tall, and then it is cut at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and about 6 and a smidge, almost 6.25 wide. So there is a cover, here is the spine, and here is the other cover, which is the same size. And when you put this into your book, it will leave a gap on all of the sides so you don't have to worry about your pages getting messed up. Now, again, I came up with these measurements because it's based off the height of the book, so from here to here, and then this was the width of the book, and then this is how deep the spine should be, is made here. So we've got all these pieces ready to go. The next thing I do is I try to determine what am I going to make the cover look like on the outside. I can use scrapbook paper, I can use a gold paper sack. I can use, in this case, fabric. So I have some fabric here that I have cut based on the measurements of this piece and this piece and this piece. So what I'm doing now is I'm basically centering these 3 pieces onto the piece of fabric, you want a little bit of a gap between the front back covers and the spine, so that when this book is opened and closed, when it comes up, it doesn't buckle and bunch right here. So you just want a little bit of a gap. And it's okay if it has a little bit of excess on the sides, because we're going to fold that in. So I'm just going to use some tacky glue. I've got Aleene's tacky glue. It dries clear. That's why I like it. It also adheres really well paper to fabric without a lot of headache. And I'm just making a very small amount. It may look like a lot, but if you were to look at it as far as depth of the amount of glue, there isn't a whole lot on here. And I'm just going to line this back up in the center of what's going to be my book. I'll press it down. I'll even use a bone folder to help mush that glue and get it nice and smooth onto the fabric. And I'm not going to worry about any glue that mushes out around the edges. I'm going to use some more of the Aleene's tacky glue and adhere the next piece. Same fashion. I'm just going right around the perimeter, adding a little bit of glue, and then I'm making a big zigzag down the middle. And then making sure to leave a tiny gap here between the spine and the cover. Don't want it too close, don't want it too far away, or your book will flop. So now I know that this will bend without any issues. Use my bone folder again to smush it out. And then I'll repeat this on the other side. So I'm doing a whole series of these videos. You should have already seen a couple of the elements that I added into this Christmas junk journal. I've also showed how to sew onto pages and make different elements. I hope you enjoyed that. This video is going to be just the cover. I'm going to do some journal charms for it and a closure, and that will be a separate video just for time concerns. Alright, so now I've got this part glued together. Okay, so there's the front. Now I need to wrap this cardboard, and this is how I do it. Again, using the Aleene's tacky glue, I'm just going to make a triangle in the corner, and then I'm going to fold this over as neatly as possible and smooth it out. And I'm going to do that to all 4 corners. Now that I've got all 4 corners folded in, I'm just going to add glue to the sides and then fold those down. Doing it this way is going to give you a nice finished edge for your outside cover. And I like to leave about 1 inch of excess of paper or fabric, so when you fold it in, it's nice and smooth and it's not right next to the edge. So there is my outside cover. It has fabric on it, and I'm going to set this aside to dry. I like for the glue to dry a little bit before I sew onto the pieces, and I'm going to sew on my sewing machine. So before I go to my sewing machine, I know I want pages and pieces to cover the inside of my journal. So I've cut a couple of pieces of cardstock. In this case, they were 6 inches by 8 inches tall, or 8 1/4 maybe. 8¼ tall and 6 inches wide. And then I made a piece for the center that is 2 inches wide by 8¼ So these are going to fit inside my journal like this. But we're just looking at red plain paper, so we need to do something to give it a little more pizzazz. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Distress Ink Black Soot. And I'm going to go around the edges of this page on the inside, the cover. And I know that I'm going to be attaching something to the bottom, so I don't have to go all the way down with my distressing. So that's just adding a little bit, and I'm going to do the same with the spine as well. So those are ready, except I want something else. So I've got some fabric here that I have trimmed to fit on my page. And what I'm going to do is go to my sewing machine, and I'm going to fold over part of this and sew that down. So I'm just going to do a zigzag stitch to sew that down so that I can place it on this pocket, or as a pocket. Here is the piece of fabric that I've sewn. Here's the other one. This is going to be the cover in a pocket. So here's what I do. I line this up by flipping it over. I'm not really worried that it's not straight. It's handmade, y'all. That's part of the beauty of junk journals. There's no wrong or way to make these. Any way that you want to make them is the right way. So what I've got here is I've got some glue stick, and I'm using glue stick because I do plan to sew, and I don't need it to be super thick with glue, just enough to hold it in place. So I'm just taking a little bit of glue and putting it on the corners and folding those in so it'll be a nice pretty edge. And then I'm going to add glue across the bottom here and fold this one up. The same on the sides. So there's one pocket made, and then here is the other one. Now I'm going to sew on mine. If you are not going to sew yours to help hold this fabric into place, you will want to use something stronger than a glue stick. I would recommend using something like Aleene's Tacky Glue to go around the edges instead of using the glue stick. Now the next step that I need to do is to sew all the way around these two pieces, and then I want to sew all the way around the cover. So on my sewing machine, I've gone around the edge with a zigzag stitch all the way around, and there's my outside cover, what it looks like. I'll trim any loose threads here and there, but I'm not really worried about it. That's what the inside looks like so far. But I'm not done with the outside cover. I want to do a little bit of a collage, if you will, on the cover. So I've picked up a few elements here and there, and I'm going to work on this. So here's what I've got on the bottom. This is a photocopy of a page out of a hymnal, and I've torn down one side, and I've got some vintage photo distressed ink, and I'm going to go around the edges and kind of give this a little more distressed look, if you will. So that's one element that I'm going to add. Then I have a image out of the Calico Collage Golden Christmas, and I'm going around the edge of it as well with a little bit of that distress ink. Then I have just a scrap of red cardstock that was left over from cutting the pieces that are going to be the inside cover. And I'm just going to go around the edges of it as well. I have a little bit of this washi tape that has the Christmas holly leaves, and I want to go across one side. So I'm just going to line it up with the edge and smooth it out, and then I'll trim off the excess from the back side. That way I make sure I get it pretty straight. I'm just kind of playing around with composition here. I've cut some ribbon to stick on here. I've got the image and I've got the music, so I'm just kind of playing with placement. And what I will do temporarily so that I can sew this, I'm going to go in and make a square where I want this square to be. And then I'm going to add a little bit of glue to the back side of the Santa image and kind of line it up with the ribbon a little bit, just so I can make some stitch marks on here. So that's temporarily held in place, and now I'm going to take that to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew around the perimeter and on top of this ribbon to make sure it's all going to stay in place. So there's the beginnings of my little collage that I'm going to put on my cover here. And I will just kind of figure out where I want it on the cover, and then I'm going to go ahead and zigzag stitch all the way around this outside edge. Now I will go ahead and add a little bit of some glue stick to the center so that that portion doesn't flop around on the journal cover. It also gives a little more stability to your cover. The more layers you lay on here, the thicker it will feel. So I'm just going to sew around the outside edge. I have one of these little stickers, and I think that would look kind of nice just to put it down here in the corner. So I'm just going to adhere this down. And then there's my outside cover. This is what it's going to pretty much look like, except for I'll have some journal charms and a closure on here when I'm done. But here's the inside. So we need to do something with this inside. Well, earlier I stitched across what's going to be the spine in my book. So I'm going to take my Aleene's tacky glue, and this is where it's really important to make sure you have a good amount of glue. So I'm putting some glue at the top, at the bottom, and then all the way around the perimeter, and then a nice zigzag stitch down the middle. And I will go ahead and add some glue in the seams on both sides, because I really want this piece to stick really well. I'll just center it on my journal, making sure it's overlapping the spine. And I'm using my bone folder to smooth out that glue that might be underneath. I'm not going to worry about if it mushes out because it's going to be covered up. And then I'm going to glue down the side pieces in the same fashion. Go all the way around the outside perimeter and then make a nice zigzag of glue on the interior. And it'll take it just a little bit for this glue to dry, but the next thing I need to do is to make sure that I've got good creases here on the side. So I'm using my bone folder. I just started to bend up the page, and then I'm creasing that into the corner. I'm going to do the same on the other side. So here we are with the book cover. It's ready now for the next part, which is adding the pages in. So here is a template that I made, and the idea is that it's about 1.5 inches wide. I folded it down the middle so I knew what the middle mark was, and then about 1/2 inch from the center. Get a pen here so you can kind of see this. I made a mark by scoring it. There's another one here. And then I end up punching holes in the middle and the top and the bottom. And this is what's going to be my guide for punching holes on my spine. So basically I'm getting this lined up into the center of my book where I want it. And you can go ahead and punch your holes. I'm going to mark them just so you can see them a little better. So now I have those sets of holes that I need to punch. And I've got a couple pieces of fun foam laying here, just so I don't punch all the way down into my table. And I've got an awl. They come in different sizes. Mine is a small awl because I like to keep it close to the same size of needle that I'm going to use on binding journals. There's some kits available, and if you check out my description box for the blog post, it has a list of all the items that I recommend. So I'm just poking a hole all the way through on all 3 of these holes or dots that I have here. Marking them like this ensures that when you go to put your signatures into your book, they're all going to be the same distance apart. Your hole placement is going to be well done, and it'll look good, especially if you want to leave the spine exposed on your journaling so you can see the stitches. So there are holes poked in there. You can't really see it on the fabric side, but we know they're there. And we have our template again. And then we have our pages. So I've paper clipped them together. You can use binder clips, clothespins, whatever works for you, just to keep the pages from shifting. And then I've got my template that I'm placing right in the center of my signature. A signature is a grouping of papers usually folded in half. And so in this case, it's 5 sheets of paper that have been folded in half. And I've got my awl, and I'm going to poke right down through the spine, or where the fold is on here, 3 times. The center, the top, and the bottom. I'm going to do that on the other 2 signatures as well. The holes have all been punched in the signatures. The next thing I do is I've got a bookbinder's needle. Bookbinder's needle is heavier than, say, a darning needle. I picked up some darning needles at Hobby Lobby the other day, and they're much smaller and they're not near as strong. But a bookbinder's needle has a smaller hole. A yarn needle or darning needle usually has a bigger hole in it. So I've got some wax linen thread here. And here is what I do is I thread my needle up. And then I like to measure out a length of 3 times what my signature is. So 1, 2, and 3. And since I know I'm going to do 3 signatures, I'm just going to go ahead and cut enough for all 3. And I like to begin with my signature that goes in the center. So this is the one that I want in the center of my book. And I start in the center of that signature by taking my needle and poking it through. I find the corresponding center hole and center signature spot on the cover and go right through on the cover. I will pull this thread and making sure to leave a small tail. So there's a small tail on the inside. And then I'll come up to the top hole on the outside cover. Then I will go through the pages at that top hole as well. So we're making sure that it's getting all lined up. And I pull these taut, usually in opposite direction. Then I'm going to go down through the center hole again to the outside of the cover. On the outside of the cover, I'm going to go back through the center hole. And I'm also going to make sure that I'm getting the signatures on the inside. Sometimes you have to fold the cover back and forth. Alright, so there that is. So looking on the outside, you can see these are nice and straight. Okay, there's not any slack in them. I'm going to take this and go up underneath this top thread and then pull these in opposite directions to tighten it. And then I tie a square knot. Now some people like to embellish further on the signature strings. Sometimes I add little things to the ends. I may do that with this journal. Haven't decided yet. But that's the first signature sewed into the book in the center. Now I'm going to repeat this process again, starting with the center hole of the signature to the center hole on the journal to the outside. I'm going to pull this through without pulling all the way through and leaving a tail. Go through the top hole on the outside through my signature. Go down through the center hole again. I'm going to catch this top hole on the cover and make sure that go through the hole in the signatures inside. Pull these taut, slip under the top thread. There's no slack. And then tie this off. Final signature, doing the same thing. I like this pamphlet stitch because it is easy to do, and really once you create a template, you can use it for multiple journals. I find that most of my journals are about the same size. So once I've started making them, it comes pretty second nature to put them together. To the top again. Through the center again. So we have just made a junk journal cover from scratch. We've learned how to cut the papers to fit your cover and cutting the cover pieces, the elements using chipboard so that you can make a junk journal, and then sewing the pages in with a pamphlet stitch. I hope you enjoyed this video. There are going to be a couple of more videos. One will be on the closure and I think a journal charm that I'm going to make. So do stay tuned and watch for that video to come up after this video. If you have any comments or questions, please comment below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do so. And check out the Friendly Junk Journal People Facebook group. It's a great group of people that love to work on junk journals, all different types of junk journals, so you can get some great inspiration and you can share there as well. Thanks so much for watching today. Stay tuned for the next video. Thanks so much. Bye.